And we begin with a story that has really striking revelations, and it's from inside the Trump cabinet meeting. And this is something where we're going to learn a lot in the next couple of moments. You may have heard a little bit about it, but I'm going to go through the evidence, the facts here, because it is exactly what this Trump White House and a lot of what Elon Musk is up to. It paints a picture of it in a way that's different from what we've heard in public, from all of the usual PR and the political press conferences and the efforts to tell a certain story. We're now going to go tonight together behind the scenes. This is reporting that shows what many would call a dysfunctional White House, and you'll see why. People at war with themselves and each other over the efforts to basically dismantle large parts of the federal government by someone who doesn't run the federal government, wasn't elected to the position, Elon Musk, and clashing with the very people who, of course, the president also picked to be in charge of these departments. And we often draw on different reporting around here. You know that from watching the news, right? We mention different stories. This is from the New York Times. Credit to their reporters, their journalists getting this story out. And it is a bombshell. The Times reports that Musk basically ended up in a clash, a conflict with much of the cabinet. That was Thursday this week. And laced into these other officials, some of whom are important, right? If you're picked to run the State Department, you are a pretty important official within the government. And just to put it clearly, we are talking right now about an unelected billionaire sitting in on these important meetings and going at people in very intense terms. And the substance matters as well as, quite frankly, the emotion and the gossip of this, because it's all part of how this government is being run. Musk going at Secretary of State Rubio, according to the New York Times, basically saying that Rubio was not firing anybody. Quote, "You have fired nobody." And Rubio responds, what about the more than 1,500 State Department officials who took early retirement in buyouts? Didn't they count as layoffs? Rubio asking then sarcastically if Musk wanted him to rehire all those people just so he could make a show of firing them again. These are two people at odds over the department that Rubio runs, and the subtext there is about who is being honest or accurate and who is just trying to put on a show. Musk then, the Times reports, was, quote, unimpressed and told Rubio actually he was the show, that he was, quote, good on TV. The subtext, the Times says, being that he was not good for much else. And let's be clear, both of these men have risen in their careers through some aspect of public show. Rubio ran for president. Musk was on the campaign trail. He's made himself into a big deal out in public, but that's how they deride each other in private, basically saying, you're not for real. No, you're not for real. No, you just do it on TV. Here we are talking about it on TV. Now, the Times reports the meeting was actually hastily scheduled because Trump's cabinet members, again, the most important people he's picked to run the agencies, had reached a kind of breaking point about what they call Elon Musk's chainsaw approach here to the cuts. And the meeting was in the cabinet room. The president was presiding, 20 officials attending. Then the Veterans Affairs Secretary, Doug Collins, using this opportunity to go after the way Musk has fired veterans and officials who work at the VA. We heard from one this week, for example. And what's interesting here, as you're going to see, is the dissent, the concern is internal. It's not just people protesting or people who've been ousted from the government.
Safe Space interview with Fox anchor Maria Bartiromo, the Trump-friendly host gently pressed him for just a tiniest bit of clarity on his erratic trade policy and the harm it is causing American businesses.
I asked you about this before, and I know you told me when I asked you, I said, you did use USMCA, you put this together. Yeah. And yet then you come back and you change it up with these tariffs, and you said to me at that time, I did it because I can. I put an amendment in there, and I said in 6 years I can change it. But I think CEOs want to see predictability. They say, look, I have to speak with shareholders. I've got to make plans for CapEx spending. I can't if it's 20% one day and then it's off for a month and it's 25%. Yeah. So can you give us a sense of whether or not we are going to get clarity for the business community?
Well, I think so. But, you know, the tariffs could go up as time goes by, and they may go up. And, you know, I don't know if it's predictability. I think
so that's not clarity.
No, I think that they say that. You know, it sounds good to say. But for years, the globalists, the big globalists, have been ripping off the United States. They've been taking money away from the United States. And all we're doing is getting some of it back.
Maria, I got to say, I've been a critic, but when you're right, you're right. That's not clarity. Here's the thing. She's not wrong about what CEOs want to see. I mean, every business person, right, thrives on some stability. And most people generally hate this kind of chaos. I mean, the major reason being that unpredictability makes it nearly impossible to plan and invest and hire and do anything.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Simone Sanders Townsend, and we begin this hour with the continued destruction of American democracy. I know, it sounds bleak, but look, it's only been 2 months since billionaire Elon Musk and his DOGE officials started bulldozing their way through every federal department, ruthlessly slashing employees across the country. Yesterday, Elon Musk met with congressional Republicans to reassure them that everything was great amid voter anxiety over those sweeping cuts. Musk and Republicans tried to map out a path to make all of these changes permanent and impervious to legal challenges.
Did he say anything to some of the concerns that he needs to slow down, take a little bit more of a cautious approach?
No, I mean, I encouraged him to go as fast as possible because we're going to lose our guts. 100, 150 days. This bunch is going to, oh man, that's cutting into my...
What Congressman Tim Burchett is cheering on, let's just be very clear, are mass layoffs, including reports that the Department of Veteran Affairs would terminate 80,000 employees. Congressional Republicans, along with President Trump and Elon Musk, are facing growing resistance across the country and in the courts. These actions are, in fact, wildly unpopular, which probably explains why Musk is reportedly unhappy and doesn't like taking the blame. The tweets would like another word. This afternoon, President Trump made quite a show of coming to his defense and explaining to the press and the public that it wasn't Musk who was directing things, even though Musk really is.
So I had a meeting, and I said, I want the cabinet members go first. Keep all the people you want, everybody that you need. Elon and the group are going to be watching them, and if they can cut, it's better. And if they don't cut, then Elon will do the cutting.
Well, the New York Times is reporting that cabinet members have been privately concerned about some of Elon Musk's actions and have voiced those concerns to White House officials. This vague proclamation, which is more performative than factual, came shortly after Trump announced that he was suspending new tariffs on most imports from Mexico and Canada until April. Now, his tariffs, or taxes, frankly, on the middle class, that's what they are, they have sent the stock market plummeting. And while Trump doesn't seem to care about the American public, he does listen to the markets. Joining me now is Republican strategist and MSNBC political analyst Susan Del Percio, former SD&Y civil attorney Maya Wiley. She is now the president of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. She was almost the mayor of New York, but that's another story. And Paul Rieckhoff, who's the founder and CEO of Independent Veterans of New York and the host of America, and the host of Independent Americans podcast. Paul, I'm actually going to start with you because I laid it out for the people. Elon Musk now doesn't want to take the credit. I don't even think the president wants the credit. They're trying to push it off to these cabinet secretaries. And one of the most, I woke up this morning, I did Morning Joe, and I was like, not the veterans, not the VA. What is going on?
Well, we said it before we went live here. This is some unique bull, right? I mean, it is outrageous, it is despicable, and it's predictable. We knew they were coming for the VA. And they've been working their way down the federal government. They started with generals, then they got to trans people. Now they've come for veterans. They're going to come for teachers. And veterans hold a very sacred space in this country. And I think what they're failing to appreciate is 83,000 people who are laid off are going to be 83,000 pissed off Americans who start protesting and start pushing back and start organizing. And really, I think what's going to happen here is the patriotic purge from the Pentagon to the FBI is going to become a very important core of the opposition, a patriotic, nonpartisan group of people who want to serve their country and think this is wrong, especially the way it's gone down. Right? It's one thing to fire people, but to fire 83,000 people who are, many of which are veterans, like you don't care, and to treat them so disrespectfully, that's where I think they're really crossing a line that's going to come back to bite them.
I mean, I would not disagree. I think, and again, the president, I think, is responding to the markets, but also Republicans, frankly, within the party, whom I know, and a bunch of my colleagues from NBC News on Capitol Hill have talked to folks. I've been talking to folks. They're calling the White House and privately being like, WT, you know what? Donald Trump signed an executive order today that would make it expensive to challenge the legality of all of his dubious orders. I want to play the sound because I'm confused, Maya, but maybe you can clean it up for me.
This presidential memorandum would order the Department of Justice, its litigating components, to seek those injunction bonds whenever someone tries to challenge our policies in court, so that when they end up losing in court, and we believe that they will end up losing in court, that they can be held financially responsible for the disruption to federal activities that their actions have caused.
What?
Well, let's just make a couple of things clear. What we just heard was, if you read between the lines, is we're getting sued because we're violating the law by overstepping our authority, and we're losing because a lot of these cases, judge has been, at least in the short term, losing. Let me be clear, because a lot of them have not been finally determined. But in the short term, we have a lot of judges in a lot of jurisdictions saying, temporary restraining order, preliminary injunction. In other words, we think there's enough grounds here and enough potential harm and enough reasons under the law to think we got to stop you now.
One of the things he said in his speech was that one of the terrible liberal things that his top campaign donor had discovered was happening in government was research to make mice transgender. And he said that in his speech, and all the Republicans gasped and laughed and jeered because that was so terrible. Actually, it's transgenic mice. And transgenic mice are used in all kinds of laboratory research because mice are transgenic when they have been genetically altered so you can study human illnesses and conditions in them even though they're mice. It is transgenic mice, you numbskulls. But sure, go ahead and shut down all the labs studying all the diseases, because what are you, 5?
So, folks, Trump is being brutalized at these press conferences, the emergency Saturday press conference, or whatever you want to call it. When the day is irrelevant, really. What matters is that people from across the aisle are tearing into him and his brain-dead ideas. Journalists, reporters, commentators, public servants, they're all doing it. And what's really fascinating there is, you see Chris Hayes, he really goes into it, where he says, Trump had his safe space interview, because Trump will often do interviews on Fox and then do particular hosts on Fox because they are the most likely to be sycophantic to him. But even here, he didn't get that. He got a bit of a haranguing from Maria Bartiromo, because Bartiromo, who is very much a Trump loyalist, has been a business reporter for many, many years, and even she, like, her professionalism leaked into the interview. I don't know, her professionalism from before she was at Fox, I guess, and she was like, sir, this doesn't work. Your policies don't work, and even if they did work, your flip-flopping, waffling on them is maybe the worst part for our economy, for the global economy, for everybody. And so Trump keeps getting destroyed in these unexpected ways for him, but we knew it was coming, because when you piss off 90% of the country and 99% of your neighboring countries, well then expect an ugly reception.